how do we match our intention with our attention?
We're just this tiny thing in this like beautiful planet surrounded by a massive cosmos. We don't even know where it ends and where it starts.
All we have in life is a series of now moments, and we can waste a lot of time ruminating about the past or kind of being overly concerned and fearful about the future. How do I just drop into this now moment? The opposite of anger is not actually happiness, it's wonder. Imaginative leader and designer sees beyond their separate self to collective we.
Welcome to Magic Academy podcast. Today our guest is Caitlin.
Oh, so great to be here. Hi everybody.
So good to have you. Second time round.
Exactly. Yeah, this is our part 2. Cheers.
Part 2. Yes, wonderful. Caitlin is a founder of MindWise and also a globally recognized expert, keynote speaker, and designer to help teams and leaders to leverage the power of well-being, imagination, and wonder to supercharge team performance and leadership in the future of work. And in her recent book, Digital Wellbeing, proposes and presents a framework about well-being, because a lot of times when we're thinking about well-being, it's this like fluffy concept, well-being, meditation and chanting and sitting and be mindful. However, no one has ever really looked into what exactly does well-being include. A framework helping us to understand what each element of well-being would include and mean, and also in the effort of guiding teams and leaders to leverage this solid framework to help them develop leadership, culture, and team collaborative environment. She believes in a life to embrace creative constraints, embrace moments of wonder and awe in alignment with ultimately our purpose, our passion, and the magic of being present. You're also bringing your power ring today, so hopefully the conversation will be supercharged for our audience. And the goal of this conversation is to find out exactly what is a potential index framework for future leaders as it relates to mindfulness and well-being, and how can leaders and teams leverage the knowledge of this framework to build a co-flourishing team dynamic into the future. So life can be fun, work can be fun, and work can be play.
I love this introduction. Thank you for framing things so well, Gianni. You know, I'm back for a second time because I love talking with you, and the way that we both have the values of infusing the word behind you, magic, infusing wonder into business practices, into making productivity rise, but also doing it with invitation, with a sense of well-being and play. And as you gave me this beautiful introduction, I looked and I have a lot of sketch materials around me. You see art supplies. I work in digital and also physical. So I wanted to start with just a game that involves something I sometimes play in workshops, just a little quick exercise. What's this?
That.
Exactly. This is Pac-Man. And, when I started working with well-being, what I found is a lot of people with this topic, they felt really sad. They kind of felt like, what's Pac-Man's being? He's basically hungry, right? Like he feels like he's always missing something. And I think part of the story and some of the allegories of storytelling is that you have to be in the beginning weak or missing something, or you have to hit a wall. People who approach the word well-being often feel like maybe they have to experience a burnout before it actually matters to them. And I wanted to honor that, and honor that there's a lot of stress and anxiety, a lot of isolation and loneliness. And I wanted to also bring to the table a new dialogue and a new way of changing the narrative about well-being so that people don't have to feel guilty or shame or as if they need to be broken. So sometimes I just hold that up, or I talk about it with students and say, what do we actually want? We want unity. We want completion. We're all on a quest, for wholeness. sometimes the journey toward wholeness, if it's a love story, it's finding love. If it's sometimes the work we do in business, it's tackling our challenges and solving problems. And we all really like that quest. And it's nice to let people know that they are already enough, that they have safety, that they have freedom to create, that they have new ideas and creative imagination at their fingertips. So when you were introducing me, I thought this is so beautiful because it also gives me a window to reframe for people what well-being means and why I'm a creative working with leaders in the field.
I resonate with that. I think it's so easy for us to fall into the trap mindset of thinking of lack, and maybe even what drives human evolution is unfortunately the sense of feeling lack, and we need to, like, it's not enough, we just need to
Yeah,
keep going, and the
more.
system more and more, and the system is very good at creating the sense of being lack and insufficient, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody's just trying to bridge that infinite gap to
Yeah.
be somewhere. And I appreciate what you're just saying. It's like we are already where we need to be. It's the present moment. It's okay. We're never in lacking. We're already whole, and all we need to do is just to see it, to embrace it, and to be aware of it, and not just cognitively but also emotionally, and embodying that sense of wholeness. And so that actually guides us to the first question. The second question, let's start with the first question, which this first question is actually inspired by one of your keynote a while back. So the question is, beep beep beep, in front of you lands a spaceship, and if you and out walks a friendly alien. If you were to use one word, one sound, or one movement to invite this alien to play, what would that be?
Oh my gosh. Well, I would definitely use movement. I'm a kinesthetic person. And so I think if it's an alien, the word might be like, "Oh, what do you mean by that word?" So I love that I haven't thought about this. I'm going to greet the alien like this. Like that. And so if I go like this, what I'm thinking is it's going to know that I'm not harmful, like I'm kind of like hands up, hands out. Definitely going to smile, and I know part of the book has to do with emotional intelligence and how we communicate our emotions. So I cite Lisa Feldman Barrett's research, and sometimes we can't always just judge by the way that faces are framed. But this alien, if I'm taking the question seriously, it's going to see me going like this, and maybe it'll want to start dancing, or maybe it will engage with me, or maybe it will see me as open. The more our body states are open, it conveys. It also would help me somatically to then put my psychology and my frame
In the
into,
open state.
yeah, into an open mindset, because I want to be curious about this alien. If it's made it all the way to me, then it has to have done a good job. Like maybe it has some things to teach us and some wisdom that we could interact with. So
That's beautiful.
I mean, that's my short answer. Then we start communicating. Have you seen the movie Arrival? I really love that movie. So
Yeah, yeah.
so I keep thinking about the language and how it takes patience and nuance, but it's fascinating to me to think about
Yeah,
that.
that's beautiful. Yeah, and also I think that will tap into the future questions, because some people may think, oh, how do you determine if the alien is friendly with that intention, and how can we not put us in a vulnerable state, but also in a very open state, so that like the being of in the non-duality and always agile and always adaptive. So I think some of the questions will tap into that. It's kind of the job that leaders have to face nowadays is to figure out what the situation is, and jazz with it, and without
Yeah.
hurting themselves or the teams, but also be open to the
Hmm.
maximum possibilities. It's a
Yeah.
very interesting space to explore. Before we go there, so digital well-being, can you tell us like why digital well-being, and how does that relate to leadership?
Sure. And just to kind of double click on what we were saying earlier, it doesn't mean to be passive. Like when we were saying in the beginning, just be, and being is enough. There's there's a paradox. We're always playing with this concept with digital well-being and what we were saying about being enough. It also means staying curious, and it also means being hungry, but not going about it from a place of shame and anxiety, going about that quest from a spirit of abundance and wonder and awe. So this whole book, and I have the book with me. So so if people see me looking down, it's because that we're talking about some concepts that are in a book that took me a year to write. It's based on research in my career and a lot of different framework. And what I'm talking about is a quality of thriving and flourishing in digital well-being where humans have better relationships. The relationship can be one that you have with technology itself. So, the relationship that we have with our patterns, our habits, how we use devices, and also kind of emotionally how we think about our digital identities and the way that we show up in the world. Because I've sensed in the world that there's a lot of kind of broken relationships, feeling like devices own us or dopamine spikes are happening, and people will say, I need to go on a digital detox weekend. We'll talk about that later, but that's one way of looking at digital well-being, reframing that relationship and changing it and shifting it into something that can be beautiful, taking back agency. And the other intention is the relationship of human to human and human to nature that is mediated by technology, because tech is not the end game. In my world, tech lets me connect with my family that's far away. It lets me get work done with my teams in ways that, is really elevated and more imaginative than it would be if we were all sitting in an office space physically all day. So a lot of digital technology has opened up new freedoms, and now it's about the intention. How do we match our intention with our quality of attention practices? So that is the whole approach to digital well-being. And I think in the past, the narratives that I've seen a lot in media is that digital is negative, digital is bad, and humans need to monitor that and set up a lot of boundaries. So people talk about it in a kind of a language that says, oh, how are you defending your own time against the digital? And what I wanted to bring up in this book and also in a lot of conversations is how can we change that so that we realize that humans are empowered to use technology in more mindful ways, because it's not going away. And we've seen dialogue about our children, the next generation. How are we approaching the future of leadership and work and what we're getting done, especially with AI in mind, in ways that allow humans to thrive in the best way we can, aligning with technology. So that's my leadership goal, to be that voice and give people back more power.
I love that. And another follow-up question is, why do you decide to see digital well-being as the overall theme rather than subdividing that into a potential subtopic under well-being? And so what's
Yeah,
the design and thinking and reasoning behind
I love
that
this.
approach?
And by the way, as I'm describing, feel free if you want to interrupt me at all, because I think this kind of leads us into, if people are following along, page 20 of this book talks about 6 dimensions of well-being. I realized I couldn't talk about digital well-being without talking about well-being. And what I'm saying is that well-being and digital, as you said, should be seen as a fusion and not siloed. Because if we treat digital as one separate category, then we're not seeing our lives right now as layered. Like, our life is layered with technology, and people are doing everything from wearing smartwatches to gathering their bio data to communicating constantly, getting alerts. And so to not treat it holistically felt to me intuitively a disadvantage to actually changing the system. So I looked in this book and found there's some dimensions of wellness and well-being that I love. So, one example is the 6 dimensions that I cite in the book on page 20 that separate it into intellectual, occupational, spiritual well-being, social well-being, emotional, and physical. And then what I did is look at all of those qualities and then look at them through a lens of digital, because digital applies to all of those, even physical. If we think about our lives, I often say our lives are phygital, because right now at a computer, I'm paying attention to the way my posture is. I'm still physically in my primary avatar of my human body. And then if I augment with any technology, whether it's wearing Ray-Ban smart glasses, with augmented reality fields, it's all happening on a layer on top of my physical well-being. And if I factor in emotional factors, social factors, there are different ways that digital can augment those types of experiences, and it can animate how I do my job. So that would be occupational wellness. And when I'm using digital, say to embody a different avatar or to have an overview effect meditation, then my spiritual well-being is amplified. So I really wanted to give it, I guess the word is context. Our lives have a context. And so it's not as easy maybe to just check off boxes and say, well, well-being needs met here. It's more about, well, how does our body feel, and how does that framework fit the context of our lifestyle with our goals in mind? So I started explaining some of the history of why people even address the word well-being in general, because I don't think people were talking about wellness and well-being, let's say in the 1950s. It became a topic as industry rose and humans were able to, I think, assess quality of life and life standards at a higher level and say, well, what's the actual outcome? Is our outcome? And you and I could have a side topic. What is happiness? What is joy?
Yeah.
What's the goal in life to have total thriving? And it goes way beyond financial. Financial is important, but as
It's
you
a
and I know,
foundation, I feel like.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not everything. So well-being is really a qualitative index that now a lot of countries are looking at and prioritizing when it comes to measuring how humans both self-assess their life and also plan their goal setting.
Yes, beautiful. So, since we're talking about the topic about leadership and digital well-being, if you were to envision the index for the future leaders in teams, what would the index include? And the leaders can be anybody, and could be someone building a startup team, starting their ventures. It could be someone leading the innovation initiative in the existing corporation structure. And it can be anybody working in any teams, that leading the teams dynamically at any time to fulfill the needs of the moment. So if you were to look at leadership through that lens, what would go into the leadership well-being index at a core level and also at a comprehensive level?
Wonderful. This is such a beautiful question, because the index is actually the foundation that thriving take place. If you have certain qualities that have been prioritized, that's intentional. And then that allows a system to thrive. And what happens right now is we're in complex systems where we have cooperative teams where you're exactly right. A leader doesn't have to be in the position of always having authority. There are different people on a team that are supporting each other. And truly resilient systems, if we even look to nature as one of our metaphors, they involve co-sensing and having different parts of leadership step up in a system to support when another part needs it. So in the book, one of the points that I make is the research that Harvard's Amy Edmondson has made about psychological safety. And one of the index parameters would be, does your team and your organization, small or large, any size, have psychological safety where it encourages failure? there's some kind of model there where people are encouraged to take risks, and there's an iterative pattern, because then both leaders and people who are on a team together don't have to be positioning like, what did you expect? How can I please you? They're thinking about the best outcome, and often leaving ego at the door, So how does that happen in a way? Then it shows, okay, more well-being can take place because people feel safe then. They feel as
Mm.
if, of course, they're going to be accountable to having high standards. But if you're on a team together, I think everybody knows what it's felt like at certain times to be with a team where you're at the edges and you're exploring and you're taking risks together without any fear. And yet there's still
Mm.
something at stake because you want the best outcome together. So I make that point in the book, which leads me toward the topic of imagination, because associated with Well-Being Index of the Future, I have it closely tied to imagination, because that's the sweet spot of human ingenuity. So as we look
Mm.
at in history, when have we ever made a creative connection, or when have we ever felt ourselves enriched and elevated? It's usually when we feel as if our imagination is being accessed. So
Mm.
I talk about, and I think it's a good consideration when we think about indexes for thriving. How much is that quality of imagination coupled with things like getting enough sleep, having enough water, getting exercise, and good nutrition? That all goes into well-being frameworks that would be the basic level of an index, and having access to quality education and healthcare and shelter. And then what does it mean to, for example, in my imagination index in the book, say the imaginative leader and designer sees beyond their separate self to collective we. How do you have different exercises in empathy? A second
Mm.
quality understands and embraces the fun factor. Fun and
Mm.
play can motivate everything. A third one builds designs that are beyond simulation. So, not just a learning and task practice that replicates physical reality. There's something more at stake and a world of wonder to lead us there. So, how can we go beyond simulating physical realities into things that might have better design practices? So, how do you have, one of the qualities is celebrating non-attachment.
Mm.
Non-attachment is really hard, and it's hard for me too, because as humans
Mm.
we're kind of
We're attached.
programmed. Yeah, we're programmed because we
Safe. We
yeah,
feel
we
safe.
recognize patterns. Our brain is really predictive, so it's actually predicting itself into the next situation. We
Mm.
like surprise, but sometimes surprise, that encourages our brain to become plastic and adaptive. This is why infusing some levels of immersive training can be really healthy for a human, because we can encourage detachment from time and space and fixed identity, and encourage our brain to be more plastic, which then makes us more creative and potentially, hopefully, more understanding of other people and the larger goal. So
I love that. Is that related to childlike wonder? Like when we were little kids, our brain is naturally plastic with a lot of like plasticity, and we adapt to situations. We treat situations as like new situations, and we always in this play and wonder state. Are
yeah,
you indicating that sort of?
I think it does. And I mean, I'm pretty sure maybe on the first podcast we talked about the levels of wonder, because I've proposed that there are 5 different levels, and the first one is that childlike open state of wonder. And the second state is an empathy, where we're wondering about other perspectives in the world, because we start to understand that there are people beyond us that have their own identities and their own perspective. And then third level of wonder would be surfing wonder, like riding the waves of imagination that lead us into a new understanding, and you just kind of let your mind take off and go on that creative path. The fourth level would be staring at planet Earth, like having an overview effect, a wonder and awe experience of, it can actually be at a spiritual level of awe, just kind of dropping away from self-consciousness and recognizing a lot of physical boundaries that we make as humans don't have to be the way that things progress. We start to feel more of a global oneness and maybe a connection to the universe. A lot of people describe this in spiritual ways, but it's attached to wonder and awe. And
That's
then
beautiful.
the fifth one is really the wonder of the Gestalt, where everything drops away. I wrote a book called Designing Wonders. I love, Gianni,
Yes.
that you're talking about wonder, because a lot of people say it fires equal in amplitude to anger in the brain, but it's the other end of the spectrum.
That's
So the
beautiful.
opposite of anger is not actually happiness, it's wonder. It's like, how can we look at wonder and recognize it as, yes, the innocence and play of children, and also the wisdom that we could have as adults. Like, we can keep wonder in our life as a practice.
That's beautiful. And also, let's kind of tie it back to the leadership. So, in the future, the world will become more and more unpredictable, and technologies will continue to thrive as it is already. And how would so in the index of for leadership well-being,
Mm.
you also mentioned the ability to be mindful. And the mindful, what I see is the ability for us to pay attention and be aware. And you have this like 3-step A's to help people to be more aware and more mindful. Can you explain what that process looked like, and how can leaders leverage that knowledge to help themselves be more mindful when they're leading in different
Sure.
situations?
So I got a little sidetracked by wonder, but the rest of the index, the keys to having better well-being through attaching the detachment, but also the imagination, would be to make sure to give agency to other people, to recognize humanity in yourself and others, to
Mm.
safely embrace challenges, and also know when to relax and rest. So, how do people give themselves permission to rest as part of the well-being index for leaders? And everybody can be a leader because we're all leading our own life design.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the last two are to allow participants in design to exit mindfully. So how can non-addictive algorithms in our leadership allow for people, we used to use the words like grind, like you have to grind your way through to reach success. And how can we come in and out of those kind of cycles? Because there is a cycle. I love rigor.
Mm.
I love things being high pressure sometimes. And what I want is not to have cortisol spikes in my body and go into panic mode and feel like things are never done or never good enough, because it leads us into this state of depletion, and our bodies remember that. And the last part is creating social connection. There's a lot of evidence that the more we create opportunities for social connection, and this can happen in digital gaming environments. I know a lot of, I've been involved in game design and wonderful elements in play that can encourage people to be together and feel that sense of belonging and connection. So what does that mean when our neural network can be fueled by synchrony, meaning that our digital helps us to have a heart coherence with other people, and feel less loneliness, and feel a lot of people want to know that they matter.
Yeah.
So back to your question, which is beautiful, about the 3 A's. Mindfulness is between the notes of all of this. Mindfulness is, I'd say, a movement, has a lot of history associated with Buddhism. And then in America, especially, John Kabat-Zinn in the 1970s and early 90s started to work with different people that were experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder, so PTSD people. He was saying, let's work with mindfulness techniques, which is a practice of awareness in the present moment without judgment, on purpose. So how do we increase our awareness? And I started practicing mindfulness decades ago, as part of my own work practice, and, also spiritual practice. I knew that when I was teaching, when I was leading groups, and when I was going about my creative practice and writing, I could get into a better flow state if I just started by acknowledging emotion, letting it go, and kind of witnessing the patterns of what will come up in your mind. So some people call it monkey mind because it has a certain way of just taking you on a ride. So as I was practicing mindfulness, I thought, wow, this is a secret superpower. It's making me better at my job. More people, I didn't have to announce it. I would just show up and be so open and adaptive that
Calm.
people noticed. So I coined the 3 A's as anchors to remember practices in mindfulness: being aware. So the first A is just being aware of my emotional state, my body state, the sensations, things happening around me. How can I detach from things if I'm not first aware? And then the second part is advancing, which means I am growing. I'm like a tree. I'm seeking sunlight. I'm a person who is not static. Nobody's static. We're on a journey and we get to choose our path. We can choose whether or not we carry self-doubt or carry the stories that other people told us. We can write our own. And that's a lesson in mindfulness. The second A of advancing means, let go of those limiting beliefs, be able to embrace growth mindset. So that advancing is that detachment from anything you would see as limiting. And then the third A is authenticity, because as soon as you decide, to just be aware and be non-judgmental about it. We're all humans. We're all in this ride together. So when I show up and I'm less focused on perfection and more focused on how can I be available in this moment to what's coming up, then I start to realize, oh, this is life. Like right now, anybody listening, this is right now. This is the now moment. Like you could get goosebumps just realizing all we have in life is a series of now moments, and we can waste a lot of time ruminating about the past or kind of being overly concerned and fearful about the future. And that's kind of it's the challenge of being human, that a lot of our life is spent doing that. And for me, the continual opportunity, which is a practice, is to I love that you just took a deep breath, because it's to take a deep breath, not prescriptively, but invitationally. We get to like say, hey, how do I just drop into this now moment? And like John Kabat-Zinn says, like, how do you recognize the moment by moment awareness that is the emergent, beautiful unfolding of your life? Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Thanks. So that's why mindfulness is an ingredient that's part of what I practice and do, because it adds flavor. It is the heart. It adds the intention underneath digital well-being and the practices.
Yeah,
It
and I
starts
think
with
the
me.
intention, I think the intention ties back into psychological safety and the
Yeah.
foundation of feeling feel safe to exist, because we create this safe space for us to acknowledge every single feeling, thoughts that we are experiencing in our avatar in this world as of
Mhm.
now. And of course it's going to be different diversity of it. If it's just pure happiness, we get bored, I think, because of all those other shades, 50 shades of whatever that
Yes.
is, that makes life more interesting. And for leaders to cultivate this sense of mindfulness, for not only for themselves but also for the team, as they tackle challenges as they come, they're gonna for sure come. Of course, we actually need to thrive on challenges, because that's a beautiful ingredients that help us to not only be aware but also advance and stay authentic,
Yes.
to kind of progressive together.
And this is
And this
resilience training. This is why
resilience, yeah.
it sounds very theoretical, but part of my work is doing things like working with the Air Force, leading their resilience training, because when people step in and realize these are qualities that can be part of their superpower, then they're more able. Sometimes it's a LinkedIn group, or sometimes it's a project team. When I come in from the outside and bring some of these active practices that are using that philosophy. I think people at first might think it's, as you said at the beginning, it's a soft subject, it's well-being. But then it's like, no, actually, this is a skill to being better at agility in this age of AI. And when we frame it through a digital lens, people are all also upskilling their digital abilities at the same time.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and also you talk about the idea of agility, and I connect that with the idea of being non-attached. And also in your book, you're talking about the overview effect, where as we observe the planet Earth from the space, we get like a sense of massiveness and oneness where, oh, we understand we're just this tiny, 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 tiny thing in this like
Minuscule.
beautiful planet that
Yeah.
surrounded by a massive, massive cosmos, whatever that is, and we don't even know where it ends and where it starts, and we're just in the middle of this massiveness. And in your book, you're talking about that helps us to get a sense of awe and
Mhm.
makes everything seem so small. Every challenge is it's just this pixel. It's just
Well,
like playing with this pixel.
and imagine this is all design framework. Part of the reason the book exists is so people can go back to it and think about these learnings and realize it. And everything you're saying is hinging on the word experience. So what I like to invite is the book to be kind of, not a manual, but it's a training to go back to where you always have it with you and a bunch of stories and examples and frameworks. And then I'm also inviting people to co-participate in workshops or in engagements where they come in and they have that overview effect experience, or they meet in a team together and they're designing in 3D. Because for me, when I see somebody else have that experience, then it codifies in their body. I think imaginatively, we can experience something through reading a book. That's why I think ideas come alive in a book. And if I say to you, imagine your greatest moments of wonder and joy, usually something happened. Usually you're engaging with something. So I wanted to offer these practices also as engagements where people can have activations and they can, either in live time with me or through different things I'm building. So stay tuned. People can
Yeah,
have these experiences. Yeah.
I'm actually very curious if we were to build this like retreat
Yes.
experiences into the virtual realities and where we get this like embodied sense of awe. And also in your book, you mentioned about the power of music, the power of sound, the power of
Mm-hmm.
movement, which we don't usually get in the day-to-day life
Yeah.
purposefully. How would you design an experience in that virtual space that actually helps leaders and teams to experience well-being that can potentially bring that sense of well-being into the real world as they build solutions and product to solve problems?
So there are two answers. One would be that in here there are design frameworks, which we could go to about some of the building priorities. Let's think about places and spaces that have that quality of meaning and that quality of play inside of them. And just imagine the safety and the curiosity and also the structure that lets people surrender, inhabit something magical, and thrive and show up with all of their questions and interactions and feel as if it recognizes them. Maybe as a human, maybe beyond human, because sometimes our containers, we're larger than what we might have assumed
Mm.
about ourselves and others. So I'm framing that, and I'm also closing my eyes because anyone who's listening who's curious, I wanted to build an invitation that can be a way to interact with digital and have wonder and have well-being as part of that, and bring you into a state of recognizing the brightness of this now moment. So people say to me, do I need to have a headset? No, you don't need to have a VR headset. So this is something that's going to be very accessible and open to everybody. and we'll have elements of music and movement and meditation, and give people in business and for personal use a chance to connect with those elements, learn more, and feel supported along the way. Because a lot of
Mm.
people have meditation practices and they might not have combined them with creativity and wonder. So
Mm.
maybe when we put this out, we could put in the comments, because I can't say all of the details yet, but we could maybe put in the comments a link where people could sign up or find out more, because there will be certain gatherings where you can taste it and feel it and learn
Yeah,
more about it.
I
How
would
does
like
that
to
sound?
taste it. Yeah, yeah. I think
So
also the
excited.
when you're talking about one way to design this experience is to put us in situations where all is kind of a natural feeling. I would first wanted to try to see the planet Earth from afar. I would like to step into the space and look at our beautiful home
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
this little blue dot in the black
Mhm.
background. And I wanted to really, I can imagine how I would feel, but I think I will feel different when I'm really there, when I'm really kind of virtually, digitally there. That would be something I'm curious about. And I think our audience will be curious about
Yeah.
that too.
I I brought a group together to a virtual moon, and it was all a team that was with the State Department. We're doing a partnership with Egypt, a bunch of archaeologists, and working on the project together. Part of the project involved going into virtual reality, and you could see layers of history. You could actually go back in time to some of the archaeological sites, and see them and witness them differently. And then I took the team to the moon, and we looked at planet Earth, and it was amazing. It was incredible. And some of the responses from the team afterwards were that they, because we did different exercises, different practices throughout this journey that was a spatial traveling kind of journey together. And when we were looking at planet Earth, it was like what you were saying. We had these moments, and there was music infused and
Mm.
objects and creativity, and people came back and after they were bouncing around on the craters and just said they were different as a team. They were more bonded. They had had experiences together, as opposed from being from the neck up, always on Zoom calls. And you can layer this where different people can experience, we can go into a digital garden or into a digital experience together that I've designed through a browser. So you don't have to have a headset. It still puts your mind into a creative place. And we can start off on Zoom, and we can use different boards to interact with ideas together. It's all
Mm.
about invitational play and giving levels where people feel safe to have those encounters, understand them, and then make them personal. So you can see
Yeah,
I come
it's
alive when I
beautiful.
talk about this, because
Yeah, I
I'm
can
an
see I can see the light.
experience designer. I love being an experience designer.
Well, that's beautiful. And I think experience has this way of shifting people's perspectives and change people. It's like it's a technology for change.
Yeah, yeah. Because then
Yeah.
you feel the emotion.
Yeah. And I think back to the situations, I think one is from like the massive perspective. Another one is like micro space. So I wanted to be like tiny. I wanted to be little on this planet Earth and be maybe a bee or a butterfly or a
Yeah.
bird and start seeing the world from their perspective. Or maybe an ant. Maybe an ant or a earthworm. I wanted to
Yeah.
see the planet Earth through. Probably earthworm does not have much experience to share.
Who
Maybe an
knows?
ant.
Could be a very
Maybe
wise
yeah.
earthworm.
Maybe they'll have different sort of senses. Maybe they sense the Earth through colors or something. We need to bring an expert who knows earthworms and how they sense the world. See, that's kind of how we learn, how we
Yes.
explore the world. There's so many unknowns that we can infuse into the experience that can potentially facilitate and cultivate a sense of well-being for leaders and teams, and the problem solving journey can be so much fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, and imagine, I'm
Beautiful.
thinking, imagine that some of the problems right now that we're facing include things like climate change, include things, we want to be solving problems that are big problems. And it often takes a certain mindset. Like when you talked about being an earthworm, I'm like, how creative, instead of meeting something with friction and being tense, because that's often not when you have an epiphany. Great scientists have epiphanies when they feel like they're in flow mode and, they're playing with ideas. So it's like meeting gravity of these serious challenges with bounce, with levity. We can use our design in
Yes.
digital to help enhance that.
That's beautiful. I hope through this conversation, our audiences, leaders, and teams, you will get a more comprehensive idea about the idea of digital well-being and how that relates specifically in the context of leadership, dynamic leadership, and digital well-being leadership.
Yeah.
And so, as we conclude this conversation, Caitlin, overall, what do you think is your magic? Also, how would you recommend our audience to implement, in the most simple way on a day-to-day basis to constantly or to periodically experience this sense of digital well-being as leaders in teams?
Mm.
I know it's a double question, sorry.
That's all right. I love it. I love not leaving anything out. I will go to show one of the final chapters in this book is about well-being through AI and how to thrive with hope. Hope is something that might seem naive because, okay, right now times sometimes seem heavy, but if we look at actually the last epilogue, future sight envisioning a future of digital thriving. One of my qualities, where if I step back and I look at myself as somebody who grew up with parents in the foreign service, moved around a lot, I had to stay adaptive and curious. Otherwise, I would have been afraid. I'm looking down at some of, like, look at your life from on high, and you can think that it's been very diverse. I was a programmer and I'm an artist. I'm a designer, and I also understand certain frameworks of science and math and what underpins a lot of digital technology. And the reason this book addresses AI is because I think right now there's so much about AI that is advancing possibilities. I'm very hopeful. So the superpower of hope is really what I rely on. And it doesn't mean just wishful thinking and stepping back. It means leaning in and saying, not only am I hopeful in a future of thriving, but there are ways to make it possible. And we can do this together. So it's not about any of us feeling like we're alone meeting these challenges. People who care so much start to feel that care sometimes as a difficult emotion. So how can we acknowledge that together, myself included, and say, hey, I choose to be hopeful, which means opening up to the truth of this moment, which is that we are all in a relational trust with each other and showing up, having conversations about AI and ethics. It needs to happen, and we can't do it alone. So that's the note that I want to close on, that anyone who has something to offer and also something that they're curious about, speak, because there are other people waiting to hear you. And they won't know if you don't take a chance and reach out and say what you're curious about, and also share what you have to share.
And at the same
That's
time, stay
gratitude.
hopeful.
Yeah,
I love
gratitude.
that.
Yeah.
I love
What were you
that.
saying?
And at the same time, to resonate and call back what you just said, is to, at the same time, stay hopeful. And then the hope will be tangible because it's being embodied in the questions that you ask, in the ideas that you share, and just the pure action of sharing and connecting is hope. It's measurable, it's tangible, and it's each micro steps that's guiding us toward hopefully a future that we co-thrive as human with technologies.
Yeah, it amplifies. I'm so
It's beautiful.
grateful. Thank you. Thank you for asking the best questions. Yeah. Really.
I try. And thank you for collaborating with me to fine tuning those questions.
I look forward to part 3 and thank everybody in our audience. Extreme gratitude. It is the season of gratitude and beyond. So thanks so much for having me on your show.
Thank you, Caitlin, and all the best luck for the future immersive experiences that you will be built. And please let us know, and we're happy to invite our community to join you on this journey and experience a sense of well-being and flourishing future that we all deserve to be in.
Thank you, Gianni. They will be physical meets digital, so everybody is welcome. And I echo that gratitude back. Let's look forward to a part 3 sometime soon.
Beautiful.